Welcome, everyone, to the Council on Hemispheric Affairs. It's a great pleasure to have you with us tonight in both English and Spanish. I'm Patricio Zamorano. I'm the co-director of the Council on Hemispheric Affairs in Washington, D.C., COHA. This is an organization that has been around for more than 40 years, about 45 years, as a think tank with academic aspirations to critical, progressive analysis. It is a pleasure to have all of you with us here from across the Americas. We have a very special guest with us tonight with whom we are going to analyze everything that has to do with the historic elections to take place this Sunday in Ecuador. This election may bring about a significant political change in Ecuador and a return to the principles of the citizens' revolution government that was led by President Correa in the past. And we see that we hope that this will be market change back to the progress being made under the Correa administration. We're very pleased to have with us tonight Ricardo Patiño, a very distinguished economist and politician from Ecuador. He studied economics at the Metropolitan Autonomous University of Iztapalapa in Mexico. In 2001, he studied at the International University of Andalusia and got a master's in economic development. After he submitted his master's thesis, he worked as an external consultant for the ILO. He also worked in Nicaragua. This is where Ricardo participated in the Sandinista Revolution and served as the Economic Planning Department Chief of the National Agrarian Reform Institute in 1980 and 1981 for the Southern region, and he was in charge of the redistribution of land during the the government for reconstruction. He started as the first executive secretary of the Alianza País movement starting on April 3, 2006, and he participated in the two presidential campaigns of Correa in 2006 and 2009. Under the Correa administration, he held many ministerial posts, including Minister of Finance, Minister for the Coordination of Autonomous Decentralized Governments and Policy, and as the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Human Movement, and as the Minister of National Defense. He is currently in Mexico, which is where he is speaking tonight. So, Ricardo, we welcome you and would like to introduce you to our two interviewers for this evening. We have Professor Danny Shaw, who is a senior research fellow at the Council on Hemispheric Affairs. And we also have Alina Duarte, who is in Mexico as you are, and she is also a senior research fellow at COHA. They're pleased to interview tonight. How are you, Ricardo? Such a pleasure to have you with us. A warm embrace to all of you and to all of the people who are following us online. During this interview, it is a great pleasure to be with you at this historic moment in the process of building a new society in Latin America, which began some years ago, and something in which we have been protagonists and are very proud of that history. So I am ready to answer your questions and concerns, criticisms, whatever you would like to discuss. And don't worry about reminding me to slow down so that the interpreters can perform their job well. And I thank you and the Council on Hemispheric Affairs, this progressive academic think tank, and I am very pleased to share with you my thoughts on what is happening in Latin America and particularly in Ecuador. Thank you, Ricardo, and a good evening to everyone. To start, we looked at your the book that you edited with other Latin American writers, in which you conducted analysis of social movements in Ecuador, Bolivia, and Mexico. And we see that the challenges of the citizens' revolution, the challenges and triumphs, and this helps us better understand that internal dynamic. Could you help us understand that better? Yes, I'd be pleased to do so, Danny. Danny is referring to a book that was just published in this past November, which is called Building Transformative Power, Construir Poder Transformador. This book really wasn't written by one person, rather it transcribes a workshop that we conducted in Mexico to analyze the situation with various colleagues who have participated in the social struggles, but also the governments of El Salvador, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Mexico. During that meeting, we particularly looked at the limits of the transformative projects that were underway in our countries and what the limits have been. And we realized that in El Salvador, our colleagues from the Farabundo Martí Front for National Liberation lost their election after holding office for 2 terms. And in Ecuador, we won the elections after 3 periods in office. Well, that is to say, the last elections were won by our party, but the president betrayed our principles. Then in Bolivia, after 14 years of the Evo Morales administration, they won the elections, but they were stolen in a coup d'etat. But fortunately, 1 year later, we have a more resounding victory of the social movements. However, there were many concerns and many thoughts that we felt that we had not delved enough into analyzing these processes. We are convinced that our administrations brought about extraordinary results in terms of improving the quality of life of our people in those 3 countries. And now in Mexico, this new administration has just been in for 3 years. We together have managed to improve the quality of life of our populations. We have improved citizens' security and safety. We have improved working conditions. We have improved issues related to social rights, the right to education, in many regards. And we have even, in the case of Ecuador, vastly transformed the infrastructure for production, roads, tourism. We made giant steps forward. And I said we did so with a very good government for the benefit of our people. And we also highly consolidated democracy. In Ecuador, we passed a new constitution, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people participated over 8 long months in order to draft a new constitution. So there was a very high level of participation. However, in both Ecuador and in these other sister republics, we felt that we had a shortcoming. We needed to work on a much more sustained basis to strengthen social movements. We believe that we did not stress this enough to allow these social movements to consolidate as the true historic agents of change. We feel that we worked for our people. However, we did not manage at the same time to allow the social movement organizations to not only accompany us, but to actually drive and move forward and analyze and criticize and correct this process of building a new society that we were engaged in. So I would say that we worked for the people, but unfortunately we did not do so with the people. And that was a mistake that we must correct in future administrations, because if we are not able to work with people, then people do not take enough ownership of our project. They will not defend it enough by tooth and nail and with their whole hearts. For example, you could see what happened in Ecuador, despite the fact that Lenin Moreno ran a campaign saying that he would continue the citizens' revolution and that he would carry on the legacy of Rafael Correa. From day one, he began to, first of all, criticize and then undo and falsify information about what had happened in our country during the 10 previous years of the Rafael Correa administration. And unfortunately, our population was not did not have enough consciousness, and they were not mobilized enough or involved enough to undo that betrayal. If we had millions of Ecuadorians outside of the government palace telling Moreno, look, you were not elected to betray our revolutionary project. You were not elected to carry out the government plan of the right wing in Ecuador, and you must go home. That did not happen because we had not allowed the people to build into an historic movement. This is not something for just the government to do. We should have worked on this, and it is necessary for a good percentage of the political leaders to remain working side by side with our people, with the unions, with the merchants associations, with the fisher folks groups, with the peasant groups. We should have helped organize and strengthen this historic subject, which really could become people's power and citizens' power. In other words, we ran a good government from the top, but in terms of the grassroots, the social base, we did not consolidate a true strength that could promote and develop our political project and defend it. This that I would describe as a mistake is a very serious one, because it may mean that our political project will not be sustained over time. It was working while we were in office and until we got betrayed. But when there was a betrayal, then the people were disenchanted and confused. They got confused by the media. The media was just serving as a megaphone for all of the lies that Lenin Moreno was telling from day one. And this kept this political project from being durable over time. So for it to be durable and sustainable, we have to not just have good government, but also have good government based on the grassroots, the social base. And this is also something that in our book we described as one of the flaws in our project, beyond the extraordinary results that we achieved with the government and with our public administration, our government policies. There are other elements that I won't go into right now, but I would just like to say that we can touch on them as we go through the questions. Thank you very much, Ricardo. We do have many questions, and I would like to take advantage of this first half hour to interview you. So we would appreciate you making your answers a little bit shorter so that we can ask more questions and make the best of our time. And I'd also like to remind our audience that during the second half hour, we are going to open up the floor.
That because I have seen a couple of questions. If you need to get the English channel, at the lower part of this screen, you will see a little planet icon. Please press in that icon and you will access the channel in English. Okay, thank you so much. Quiero darle el micrófono ahora a nuestra investigadora.
Would now like to give the floor to our senior research fellow at COHA, Alina Duarte. Thank you, Patricio. And Ricardo, once again, thank you very much for being with us. I hear a lot of self-criticism in your comments, And I know that you've had enough year to think about what failed with the citizens' revolution. Now that I want to ask you, since you've thought about those mistakes and shortcomings, how does this self-criticism get reflected in what Andrés Arauz is proposing in his political plan? How can you materialize these corrections on the economic and political and social path? What will the big difference that you hope they will make that was not possible during the 10 years of the citizens' revolution? I'll have to tell you very honestly that the main mistakes that I have pointed out, and a few others that I haven't mentioned yet, are really from the political sphere, political agreements that we didn't make. For example, with the popular and solidarity economy, and we need to work far more on an aggressive, broad-based plan of alternative media and other elements as well. But I must tell you that in terms of the economy, in terms of public policies and social policy, and in terms of infrastructure and building for the future, I would just have to say that I don't really have criticisms in that regard in terms of our public policy, but we do need to consolidate things. For example, we have put forth the need to change the matrix of production. And we did change the energy matrix, the energy grid. We have 40% of hydro for energy production, and it's gone up to some 45%, and that is truly an extraordinary accomplishment. But we need to much further consolidate the change in our productive matrix, and we need to also consolidate the new universities that were created and to qualitatively improve our universities, our research centers, and our technological innovation centers, so that we can have a society capable of facing the challenges of a globalized world and to no longer be dependent in terms of technology.
Muy positivo en lo social.
In the social arena, the results were very positive as well, and we had a lot to move forward. But we especially have to achieve, and this is my main criticism, for society to be not just beneficiary of the public policies, but to be protagonists, to be involved in these policies. I'm gonna do short answers. I just wanted to remind you a little bit to speak a little slower, to please. Professor Danny Shop is going to continue. Yes, we have seen mobilizations of very large mobilizations in the campaigns. And they closed last night with a lot of enthusiasm in Quito and Guayaquil and all over the country, and also internationally, because right here in New York, there is a lot of Ecuadorians, as well as in New Jersey, in Mexico, in Venezuela, in Europe. All the Ecuadorians are paying attention. And I'm talking a little bit about with the campaign and with enthusiasm that the people are feeling right now after 4 years, very long years of Lenin Moreno. What is the temperament in the street? Can you take the temperature of the street in Ecuador? Once again, I can tell you that we can feel in the people a lot of nostalgia for the years we were there, a lot of longing, because really the last 4 years had been very sorrowful years. Not only the last one with the pandemic because of the COVID, but the first 2 years of the government of Lenin Moreno's government, where there was absolutely none moving forward, not even complying with the basic promises of his campaign, because his time was dedicated to prosecute the leaders of the citizens' revolution and trying to blame his inefficiency, the results of our government, when what we did was really leaving the economy running, and the social rights were absolutely we comply with all of this. We left behind a wonderful infrastructure. However, all this time, what he's been doing is attacking our government, what was our government, and our leaders, and persecuting all of us, and also forbidding us to participate, forbidding us from different ways for us to have a political party, because they stole the one we had through this little trick, through the judicial, law, wars. So, however, we were able to integrate everything, and we have a candidate, but that candidate is very fortunate to have, people like him. He's an economist. He's a brilliant economist. People are very fond of him. He's academically, he's brilliant. He's very young. Also, he's 35 years old. He's going to turn 35 tomorrow, Andrés Arauz. But besides that, one of the fundamental elements is that he represents the project of the citizens' revolution. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to reach the numbers of the voting intentions that he has already. He has the largest numbers in the polls from the 16 candidates, presidential candidates, between 37 to 45%, more or less, according to the polls. And who follows him closely is Guillermo Lasso, who's a banker that has participated also in the last two elections. He's lost before against us, both elections, and he has like from 22 to 31%. And then there is Carlos Perez, that represents the political arm of one sector of the indigenous movement that is called Pachacutic. And according to the polls, I'm not telling you what's going to happen on Sundays, but according to the polls, has about 10 to 20%. This is the results of the polls so far. We will see if this is confirmed on Sunday, but everything points that our candidate has that preference in the votes, even though it has not been a well-known political figure, because he comes in representing the citizens' revolution. He is part of this revolution, and this revolution, this citizens' revolution, is the ones that are supporting him, behind him. And he, as a person, as an academic, as a professional, as a young person, he's contributing a lot. But his basis basically is in the memories that people have in the 10 years of our government. Personally, I have the feeling that there is a lot of hidden vote in the polls. There is a lot of people that are not saying that they are going to vote for Andrés Arauz because they're a little bit afraid of pronouncing themselves, because there's been so many aggression from the government and from the media, from the political class, the right wing against us, that people are afraid to make a statement. And also at the end, people have realized that Andrés Arauz has the largest promise of voting. There is also something that is called the useful vote. I hope and I trust, I hope not to be wrong, that on Sunday we will go over 40%. According to the Ecuadorian legislation, you win in the first round without having to go to the second round or to what they call the counting the ballots, if you win with more than 50%, or if you win with 40%, if the next candidate, if the advantage is over 10% from the candidate that follows closely. We will see what happens. We'll see if the polls are correct, and we hope that those polls won't reveal yet all the votes from the citizens' revolution that we will find out on Sunday for us to win on the first round. Thank you so much, Ricardo. I just want to remind everybody that we are in this event from Washington, D.C. in Hemispheric Affairs. I want to remind that everybody can ask questions. A few minutes from now, you can raise your hand or you can write your question in the chat so that you can ask questions to the ex-Minister Patiño. And next questions. Thank you so much. I don't want to talk about all these regional alliances from the left, not only in Latin America, but also in Europe, close to Podemos and close here to Pepe Mujica, and also with Alberto Fernandez, Evo Morales, going back to Bolivia. So we see that Latin America posture, regionalist postures, but openly to the left. What would be that project? Let's say that ALBA and all these organizations, that every time that the left moves forward in Latin America, they try to break it down, they try to interfere. What would happen with these organizations like CELAC, ALBA, UNASUR? What would happen with Andrés if he is the winner? The possibility to retake to the resurgence of the projects of the integration of projects are every day they're more real. Since Andrés Manuel López Obrador won in Mexico and later on Alberto Fernandez and Cristina in Argentina, and then in Bolivia with Evo Morales, or I mean by Luis Arce, that takes back the rhythm of the revolution that Evo Morales led after the Chilean people winning with a new constitution. We trust that we will be winning in these elections. We are realigning, we are retaking this project of reintegration that unfortunately it was very harshly beaten down with this restoration of right-wing governments. And I say unfortunately, because it makes no sense. Whether you are from the right or to the left, the integration is very important. Because it's like if in the United States, if the states would not get integrated because there were parties from Democrats and Republicans elsewhere, it is as if Europe would be divided now because some countries are from, on the right, others on the left, some others in the center. Integration is fundamental in a global, localized world where every topics have to be focused in the interests of the region. Latin America has many reasons and many common interests. It has a common history. It has a main language in common also, and other languages that are also shared. And it has a lot of things to defend internationally together as a bloc. But especially they have a lot of elements that allow them to complement each other. Some countries have a lot of natural resources, but not enough technology. Some other ones do. Some countries have higher capacity of production of energy. Some other ones need this energy. We are selling, for instance, electricity to Colombia and Peru because we have a very high hydraulic power plants, and we built 8 of them. And we're also going to sell electricity to Chile in the following year. So we have a lot of common elements and a lot to learn amongst ourselves. And we have also the possibility to drive common politics so that we don't compete against ourselves, so that transnationals would come to one country or the other. So we should have labor, environmental policies that are common. The integrations, we have shown this when we were supporting UNASUR and CELAC. We had a lot of benefits for our countries, and some of them, many of them, that have to do with peace, with the strengthening of democracy. I know Andrés Arauz. He was living in Mexico when he was a candidate to the presidency of Ecuador. He left here, but we had long conversation, and he's an integrationist 100%. He knows, he understands as an economist, as a macroeconomist, he knows very well the importance of integration, and he is also going to support it, of course, like any the other colleagues, presidents of the other countries as well. Thank you so much, dear Ricardo. Jesus de Amba and Juan Moeses, they have some questions, so we're going to give them the floor in a minute. Professor Danny Shaw, please. Ricardo, we've seen from here the censorship that has happened in Ecuador in these last 4 years, dictatorship, media dictatorship. The vice president, Jorge Glass, the former vice president, is in jail. Other leaders are also in jail or in exile. Tell us a little bit more about this censorship and what can happen, what may happen, you know, starting Sunday or Monday, or should we wait until April or May for the transition of power to end with this censorship? I'm going to start talking about the last part of your question. It's very difficult for things to change overnight. In May 24, it would be the government taking actually the power. Some of these systems are in the jurisdiction of Ecuador. So it's going to take a little while longer, according to the laws in Ecuador, to prevent politicizing so much the judiciary system in Ecuador and these absurd charges against us to be, you know, to be dismissed. In Ecuador, like in many other countries in Latin America, we had a strategy from the political power in North America and complicity with the political and economic powers in our countries. It was called the loafer. That was the name of this politicization of justice. They used the judicial system to persecute, to jail progressive and left-wing leaders of the region. Why they did that? Because it was impossible to deny what we did. It was impossible to cover the extraordinary results that we had, the quality, the life standards that our governments did improve, because it was not possible to cover this reality. What they did is that they tarnish it. They started using the media, the large media, and even the international media chains like CNN amongst them, to accuse us of corruption acts that were fake. In the case of Ecuador, there hasn't been any. They haven't been able to prove any of this corruption because there's not such a thing, with some exceptions, which of course those things may happen. But the main leaders of the citizen revolution had not been able to prove. Rafael Correa, they had to make up like a judicial figure that it cannot be applied to his case, because some of these officials, government officials, have requested some contribution to some companies, corporations for elections. If that happened, to begin with, it's not a crime. If that happened, it is an infraction, electoral controversy. But they wanted to involve President Correa that was never involved at all with this practice. So the jurisprudence they have used is that influx is a theory, a law theory, when a minor or somebody that has a mental discapacity has some kind of commit some kind of crime. So the person that is the guardian has that influence. But this is a legal figure that is applied to a minor, to a kid. Like if this is like his parent always beats up somebody that is like an indigenous person, so this person also does the same thing, and the person that is defending interceding for this minor can say like they did that because they had the influence of the parents. So they try to apply this to these people because they have not been able to prove anything. No emails, no letters, no notes, no phone calls, absolutely nothing. But they have tried very hard, and they had tried to, and they had already convicted her in the last legal stage that takes normally like 6 months, a year, 5 or 10 years, up to, they did it in 17 days, just to leave Rafael out of the campaign, out of the electoral campaign. This is what happened. Jorge Glass, he's in jail with no proof whatsoever. The argument of the prosecutor is that he must have known a corruption act that they must have had with officers of the government. There is no proof, but the case makes us believe that he must have known. He's been in jail for 3 years. I'm in Mexico. I have to be in jail because I know that they had something for me also. My crime was to be in an internal meeting, to have told to our militants, we have to go with our people in the streets to fight for our rights that are being override by the government of Moreno. I said that, and when I said that, I said like, we're gonna take the streets to defend the right of our people. I'm not saying that we're going to do it violently. I said exactly that we should not use violence. So I have a charge against me, and there is a trial against me for instigating to the weakening the solution of the government of Lenin Moreno. So imagine where have we come that we cannot even talk.
Ha sido conculcada en nuestro país. Además de
You see how much this has been inculcated in our country, and also the case of Pichicha. They have electronic means. They say that she promoted the mobilization of October 19 and 2019, and this is what we've been experiencing in Ecuador, and we hope that this will end when we get a new administration, because we cannot live under a false democracy, which really has been a dictatorship, not only in terms of persecution, but also in terms of undoing the institutions of our country, which has occurred under the Moreno administration. There are some more specifics to this that I won't have time to go into now, but the way they have been undoing our institutions, and under our administration, we were able to decentralize this state. All of this has been thrown out by Moreno. That's why it is very important to not only win the presidency, but to also get a majority in the National Assembly. I hope that we can achieve this, hopefully alone, but if not, through alliances. Thank you, Ricardo. We have a couple more questions from our panelists, and then we have about 4 from the public. So let's try to make the best out of the 18 minutes left to us. Alina, Duarte. Yes, very quickly. All of the surveys, as you have indicated, they all agree, and they say that Andrés Arauz is in the lead, but a reality in Ecuador that concerns us is the role of the United States in the region. We have seen that Lenin Moreno went to Washington, and we'd like to hear your impressions of this fact. And he also met with Luis Almagro, the Secretary General of the OAS. What do you think it means for Lenin Moreno to go up to the U.S. Capitol in the last few days of his presidency? Answer, it's something he should be ashamed of. For him to go during an election campaign to the United States, without a doubt, well, if you had maybe a state visit by the new president to talk about trade and political relations between the two countries, but to go up there to speak in person. He could have done this by Zoom or by video conference. So I do think that he went to meet with Luis Almagro, another Latin American trader, to try to arrange some kind of maneuvers to prevent Andrés Arauz from having victory. There is nothing else that could explain that visit. There's no reason for him to have made a visit at this stage of the game for nothing, because if it was a matter of credit, they already got it after he did everything bad for our country, and then he got the credit. So what was he doing? Arranging a maneuver to prevent Andrés Arauz, who we think will win the elections, from consolidating his victory. And this is what we think. Can be no other reason for such an absurd, ridiculous, and suspicious trip to the United States at this time. Danny Shaw, my last question, Ricardo, and this is what Lisette Tanario was asking in Puerto Rico. She is talking about CONAI and the relationship between the Union of Hope, UNES, and the CONAI, the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador. The press here in the U.S. has been saying that the indigenous people of Ecuador are against Correa because of his government's extractivism. So could you perhaps shed some light on this for us? In Ecuador, there are some indigenous organizations, and all of them are very important. Some of the presidents and former presidents of the indigenous organizations are part of our political project. Just to say, given the second-ranking candidate to the National Assembly was the president of CONAI, and he is a very highly respected indigenous leader in Ecuador. He is not close to the current leaders of CONAI, and that's in Waxac is the president of he's the fourth candidate to the National Assembly. Pedro de la Cruz, up until recently, was the president of FENOCIN, which is another national federation of peasant and indigenous organizations of Ecuador, and also a candidate to the Andean Parliament. So there's three of them, and there are many others that I won't go into to not give you too many names. However, there is a significant segment of the indigenous movement that will vote for us. And this is because they remember what we did when we were in office before, both what was done in terms of the rules and in the Constitution and in public policies to benefit the indigenous population, which was quite widespread. What did occur during our administration was a certain distancing from the leaders of CONAI, that organization, but not the other organizations, because we had much more fluid relationships with them. But with CONAI, there were some disagreements and some distancing because President Correa decided to promote some institutional changes. And this meant that some trade union power was being taken away from CONAI, for example, in terms of bilingual intercultural education. So some of the people at CONAI broke off the dialogue and negotiations with them. And since that time, they have been opposed to citizens' revolution. However, I can tell you that that is just part of CONAI. In fact, the main leaders for the very large demonstrations that took place in October 2019, Leona Cisa and Jaime Vargas, have not supported Pachacuti, who is the political arm of CONAI, and who's Carlos Perez. They have not supported him, and they have clearly stated that they are not supporters of him. They are very much in disagreement with the way he was chosen as the candidate. And I'm certain that if there is a second round of voting, a runoff vote, these indigenous leaders will also support our candidate and not the candidate Guillermo Lasso, who would be in second place. I am convinced that most of the indigenous movement is going to support us in the runoff vote. And during the first round, I also know that many, many members of the indigenous movement, there are many mobilizations that we have seen recently. And in these, you can see the presence of the indigenous movement supporting our candidates. And that is a fact. And I'd like to just say something about Carlos Perez. He changed his name. His name is Carlos Perez, and he changed his first name to Yaku just so that he would seem like an indigenous person, and he changed his hairdo. So this is a little bit of putting some makeup on the situation, but as a candidate, he doesn't have much chance of winning. And I again insist that there are many people from the indigenous movement that will support us in the first round of voting, and even more so in the runoff vote when they won't have their own candidate. I thank you very much, Ricardo. We now have a question from the audience, and I'm going to give the floor to Lucy, who has an interesting question, because throughout this hemisphere, we in the Americas have many things in common. We had the coup in Bolivia and electoral fraud and a coup in Honduras. So in Ecuador, we believe that this is a time for reconstruction, not only of Ecuador, we hope that it bodes well for Honduras as well. So Lucy, you have the floor, and please ask your question now, Lucy. Yes, can you hear me? It's a great pleasure and honor to be here, and thank you for the invitation. My question is aimed at the fact that on November 28th of 2021, Honduras will also have presidential elections, and the Libre Party will be participating for the third time since the coup d'etat. We founded the party in 2012 under the coordination of our highest leader, former President Zelaya. In 2013, we participated in elections the first time, and we were victims of the first fraud that was orchestrated and directed by the U.S. Embassy in Honduras. The same thing occurred in 2017 when we formed an alliance led by Libre Party, which we also won, but the embassy declared the narco dictator imposed on Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, as the victor once again. And he's about to, his brother's about to be sentenced for weapons and cocaine trafficking to the United States here in the court in New York. So these are the kinds of puppets that they put in place in Honduras. So my question is, do you have any advice, esteemed foreign minister? I'm very pleased to see you once again. I have met you in person several times in New York. I'm Lucy Paguada, and I am the coordinator for Libre Party in the United States and Canada. So what advice do you have for us in Honduras who have elections on November 28th, 2021? First of all, my full solidarity with you. The day after the coup, we went to Honduras. I went there with President Correa to support Zelaya. I believe that we had to see him in Costa Rica, and we expressed our solidarity with him to try to see how this could be rectified, and unfortunately it was not possible. But that coup d'etat was completely unjust, illegal, it violated everything. But unfortunately, the United States still has the power to subject many of our countries to their own interests. I'm also familiar with the manipulation that was carried out in previous elections, and I hope that in the next elections, your people will be able to win despite all of the attempted fraud and trickery, that there will not be fraud this time. We know that the situation, it's very tricky trying to give you advice. I would just say that you should just bear in mind our reflections, and perhaps it would be good for us to share the book with you, perhaps Patricio or Danny can connect us by email, and I could give you a PDF version of it, and you have no problem with copyright. You are free to share it. We have allowed it to be openly available. I think it would be very interesting for you to bear in mind that the Bolivians, Ecuadorians, Mexicans, and Salvadorans all made in this book. Maybe you might find some of it is useful, but you have to build the capacity to mobilize, have to build social organizations. That is the only way to have good electoral outcomes, but also to consolidate power for our peoples. And thank you very much for your question and for your good wishes. Lucy. Patricio, thank you very much, Ricardo. We have another question. This is from Ruben Sierra. Ruben Sierra, you have the microphone.
Great discussion. Mi español is no bueno, pero en inglés, what institutions or organizations in Latin America do you believe have the capacity to stimulate further integration of the Americas?
Perdón, Rubén, hubo un problema técnico.
Excuse me, Ruben, we had a technical problem with the sounding. So you're asking the question in English right now. Ask your question once again, Ruben.
Yes, my question is, what institutions or organizations in Latin America do you believe have the capacity to stimulate further integration of the Americas?
La pregunta, Ricardo, es ¿qué instituciones de América Latina tú crees que en este momento tienen la posibilidad de crear el nivel de integración? Sabemos el contexto caótico que existe con el tema de la OEA.
He's just repeating the question. We know about the chaotic situation with the OAS and the role of the Lima Group and how this affected UNASUR, ALBA, CELAC. So where do you see potential integration in terms of what's going to happen on Sunday? There is a weakened integration process underway. It's weakened, but it's CELAC, and it is operating. Now, of course, the pandemic has complicated everything, but Mexico is the current chair of CELAC in 2020, and they have been requested to continue this in 2021. That is in recognition of the leadership shown by Andrés Manuel López Obrador. And this is the space that has the best potential for fostering integration. It seems to me that after a victory on Sunday or in a runoff vote, victory by Andrés Arauz, I think that this will further consolidate the progressive political outlook in Latin America. Now we have to see what happens in Peru, what happens in Chile. These are also elections to take place this year. And if progressive governments are elected there, then I'm certain that UNASUR, the Union of South American Nations, will be reactivated. I am confident this will happen. I don't know whether it will take 1 year or 2 years, but I'm sure that UNASUR will get back on track. But at present, the institution that is most consolidated is CELAC under the presidency of Mexico. And I believe that this is going to gain strength and, in fact, help UNASUR to get going again. Thank you very much, Ricardo. We have almost come to the end of this excellent conversation. And we have a question from Jesus Teama. He says, oh, he would like to ask it directly, and I'm going to give him the floor. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Very well. I'm going to be brief because I have many concerns, Mr. Patiño. I am an Ecuadorian who lives in California. One of my questions is about the interventionist foreign policy. We know it's not only been economic, but also military intervention with the installation of military bases, including in the Galapagos Islands. What does our candidate, I say our candidate because I'm going to vote for him, and I can tell you that now, and I'm not going to hold back on saying that. What will our candidate do to make sure that that military base will leave Galapagos. That's the first point, because with the pretext of the war on drugs, they have been implementing various plans like Plan Colombia, Plan Merida, to completely invade our countries. And that plan has failed. It is not succeeding at curtailing drug trafficking. In fact, organized crime is just increasing in our communities because of the illegal flow of weapons going towards the north. Thank you very much. Because of time constraints, we're now going to allow Ricardo to respond. Ricardo, you have the floor, please. Thank you very much for your question. And also thank you for your support for our party in the elections. I would like to put forth, I can't anticipate what Andrés is going to do as a president, but I'm familiar with the foreign policy he's proposing, which is one of sovereignty. And our constitution prohibits military bases. The agreement that Moreno's government has had with the United States, they say it's not a military base, but rather it's just a landing strip, and that they can only use the Galapagos airport to refuel. But in fact, it is a military presence which is prohibited by our constitution. Therefore, Andrés, just in compliance with our constitution, which I'm certain that he will do this, and I don't know if I can go out on a limb here, but I'm sure that he will set aside that agreement. And fortunately, it's not a stable base, a full base, but it is a refueling station. But we don't need it. We Ecuadorians have the capacity to take care of our territory, and we have done so very well. Such that this use of Galapagos, I know that this is going to end. The same happened with Rafael Correa, who put an end to the military base in Mande, because Andrés Arauz is very respectful of our constitution and truly devoted to the sovereignty of our countries, and will not allow the United States to continue to stick its nose in our business through the military. It's not just in the Galapagos, it's also on the border with Colombia, and we have our administration got rid of them, and I'm certain that Andrés Arauz will do the same as soon as he takes office. Thank you. I don't want to let you go, Ricardo, without answering this question from Juan Moises, who apparently knows you and wants to ask the next question. Juan, if you're ready, I'm going to give you the floor in a couple of seconds.
No, parece que no. Juan, voy a hacerla yo.
Apparently no. Juan, I'm going to ask the question. Juan is, oh, there he is. Juan, go ahead. Can you hear me now? Okay, Ricardo, good evening from Ecuador. How are you? Fine, thank you. We remember you a lot because you're a leader, an Ecuadorian leader from the working class, from all the working classes. You're very well known here in Ecuador. We miss you. And we would like to know, Ricardo, if you're going to be part of the government starting on Sunday, because Arauz is going to win on the first round. Is it possible for you to be in the government, or are you going to be a consultant somehow? Because we do want, Ricardo here is very strong. You're very popular here. Thank you so much for your words, Juan. You're very generous. You're very kind. I have talked to Andrés Arauz. I told him one of the main mistakes that we made is like the lack of strengthening the social movements, not to have a precise partnership with a small producers. The activity that I had a lot of relationship in my life with microfinancing. I work with a population movement for 10 years, and with a workers movement another 10 years. And I told him, if you allow me, even if you don't, I'm gonna go work there with working in this large stage of my life. I am already a senior citizen. I have done a lot of formal work. I work in the government, and I think that the time right now is like, we have to take this time, and hopefully they can count on you also, Juan, There's thousands and thousands of activists that we can work with a grassroots movement to consolidate a solid basis and support the government Arauz from there, but not from the official government, because there's a lot of people that can do that very well as well. I think that it's time for the new generation and those of us that have the vocation and have experience for social organizations should be doing that. So that's going to be my contribution. I'm going to do it from there, supporting the government of the citizens' revolution that would be led by Andrés Arauz. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ricardo, for your time. We want to respect your time and the time of everybody. We have come to an end. We would like to also thank our interpreters, Clark and Sandra Pieto, Sandra Tapia. We are very thankful for your support tonight. Also, we want to thank Alina Duarte, independent journalist and social investigators in the Hemispheric Affairs Council, and also Danny Shorks from New York, one of our researchers, associated researchers also, and previous minister and probably a future organizer of social movements, Mr. Ricardo Patiño. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to participate, and I'm here always for you anytime. Thank you. Thank you so much to Lucy and all our friends in Washington, in Quito, in Mexico City, New York, everywhere. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you, Patricio, for moderating this event. A big hug for everybody. Yani, thank you, Ecuador. We are very hopeful. Right now, you're the example, and when we see going back to the motherland soon. Thank you so much, Dani. You're all invited to COHA.org.
Muchas gracias a todos. Que tengan una
excelente. Thank you for everybody. Have a great evening in Friday. Greetings from Washington, D.C.